Hey Summoners, how's it going? My name is Nathaning and I'm happy to welcome you guys back to our channel. For you first timers, this is our Korean build series where we cover brand new builds that you need to be aware of for the patch. We'll cover some of the upcoming ones for each role, so be sure to stay tuned. Hit that sub button because we're always making content to keep you all informed. Now, let's go ahead and hop into the video. Our first build is for Yorick. He has had one solid patch this season where he's dominated after a huge buff. Unfortunately, he was nerfed shortly after and has been relegated to a role as a low elo fiend. This patch, things are bound to change though, because we have the new item, Hullbreaker. The old split pushing item, Sanguine Blade, wasn't exactly the best purchase on a bruiser like Yorick. Instead, Hullbreaker's defensive bonuses and increased turret damage better align with Yorick's split pushing needs. As always, a single item change can be a game changer with any champion's build, and we already see players bringing the champion back from the grave, which is very in tune with this theme with a single item change. Already a monstrous split pushing threat, Hullbreaker accelerates Yorick's split pushing power. Even though players could previously go for and ignore the problem and just win the teamfight strategy, the risk is much higher this patch. If you're unable to get a clean fight in or the enemy team successfully disengages, you can absolutely bet that you've lost a turret or inhibitor because of it. You've probably heard me mention this a bunch already, but split pushing is so much stronger this patch. If that's something that you need help with, make sure you hit up a coach at ProGuides.com. They can even help you if you're trying to learn how to beat somebody that won't stop split pushing. For runes, run Grasp with Undying, Demolish, Bone Plating, Revitalize, Magical Footwear, Cosmic Insight, Double Adaptive Force, and your choice of defensive stat. Demolish is a must. Your goal as Yorick is to split push, so maximizing turret damage is arguably the most logical choice. For items, build Divine Sunderer, Defensive Boots, Hullbreaker, Seric's Gauge, Deadman's Plate, and Spirit Visage. We have a new build for the league's newest old champion as well. If that's too ambiguous for you, we're talking about Dr. Mundo, who was recently reworked. While he's still a pretty fresh pick, we're here to catch you up on a new trend. Players are taking Ignite instead of Flash rather frequently on him. His new passive supports this shift, as Goes Where He Pleases grants him the immunity to crowd control on a moderate cooldown. With it, he can often survive ganks as long as he isn't too pushed up. If he's getting in good trades, 1v2s are quite realistic with his damage output as well as the extra boost Ignite provides. For runes, run Conqueror, Triumph, Legend Tenacity, Last Stand, Bone Plating, Revitalize, Attack Speed, Armor, and your choice of a second defensive rune. All of these runes are excellent on Mundo for their own reasons. The biggest ones to take note of are Last Stand and Legend Tenacity, however. While the other ones are arguably negotiable, Tenacity is crucial for Mundo's playstyle, and Last Stand provides the most value as you're only often relying on health regeneration rather than current health to stay alive. For items, build Sunfire Aegis, Hullbreaker, Defensive Boots, Thornmail, Spirit Visage, and a Warmog's Armor. Hullbreaker, while obviously optional, is great to include because it gives you a bunch of side lane pressure. It sucks when you're limited to only one choice in the game. If you're able to take a step back from teamfighting and win through other macro strategies, your opponents have to often adapt to your choices, and that's much better than having to play the other way around. That's it for the top lane builds. Take a look at the screen one more time for a recap. Let's go through the jungle next. Our next build is for Kindred. This is a build that started surfacing towards the end of last patch. Although it's a bit weaker for ranged champions this patch, Divine Sunderer remains usable, especially against tankier enemies. In combination with Blade of the Ruined King, you're able to cut through flat HP, punishing tanks and bruisers who typically love stacking health early on. The bonus health that Divine Sunderer grants is also great for marksmen as it allows them to survive in many situations they would otherwise be bursted down. Before we move forward, let me tell you what to build. The runes are Conqueror, Triumph, Alacrity, Coup de Grace, Zombie Ward, Ravenous Hunter, Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and Armor. Nothing special about the runes, so let's go ahead and talk about the items. The items are Divine Sunderer, Berserker's Greed, Blade of the Ruined King, Wit's End, Black Cleaver, and a Guardian Angel. You have some decent tank stats with this build without sacrificing the damage, and I especially recommend this build because of how much health that it actually grants you. When paired with an Ember Knife for challenging Smite later on into the game, there's simply just too much value. Take this statement with a grain of salt, but I think in most situations, flat health is simply the best defensive stat you can choose to pair with challenging Smite. While it's not objectively superior to Armor or MR, it's often more versatile, which is what you need when there are 5 opponents on the enemy team. Flat health is effective against all forms of damage, including true damage. Regardless of who your opponent is, this build will make it significantly harder for them to win. Before we move forward, let me ask you the question of the day. Do you think there are any other items that need to be added to the game? I love the addition of Hullbreaker and Anathema's Chains, which is really hard to say. I think the game would be more fun if there were stronger consumables. Although it adds some chaos, I think it'd make the game more interesting if you go for riskier purchases that may or may not pay off when you're trying to make a comeback. But I guess the problem with this is that if you're ahead, you could probably buy these items as well, and you'll probably just push your lead even further. Anyway, let me know your answers in the comments down below. Recently buffed, we have a new build for Viego. Like Kindred, you can make use of Divine Center combined with Blade of the Ruined King to quickly cut through tankier enemies. However, one big change players are incorporating is that they're running Teleport instead of Flash. Teleport jungle meta. There we go, boys and girls. Viego's kit already provides a decent amount of safety. As most of us know, Viego's E allows him to create a stealth field around a certain terrain. This already makes him difficult to pin down, but he also has his W to quickly dash away and even his ultimate as a last resort. As a result, Flash is an unnecessary convenience. By running Teleport instead, you can play for counter ganks early on and transition into a split pushing role later. Viego is an incredible split pusher with his high damage output. Once again, his E provides plenty of safety that allows him to either stall out the game for his team and also forces enemies to commit heavily to put a stop to him. By using the long wall on either side of the lane, Viego has plenty of opportunities to juke his enemies or simply retreat if they choose to give up. For runes, run Conqueror, Triumph, Alacrity, Coup de Grace, Zombie Ward, Ravenous Hunter, Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and Armor. For items, build Divine Sunderer, Defensive Boots, Blade of the Ruined King, Seric's Gage, Death's Dance, and either a Spirit Visage or Guardian Angel. Now I'll be covering our jungle builds. Take a look at the screen one more time for a recap. Anyway, we'll be running down to the mid lane next. Our first mid lane build is for the return of a tank, Ornn. While he got picked here and there, Ornn's popularity has dropped significantly as a mid laner. With the addition of Anathema's Chains, however, he has much more agency than before. The damage reduction it provides, as well as the fact that you can reduce an enemy's tenacity, is invaluable. When your biggest strength as a tank is the amount of crowd control that you can apply, tenacity reduction is easily one of the strongest stats that you can build towards. For runes, run Unsealed Spellbook, Magical Footwear, Biscuit Delivery, Cosmic Insight, Second Wind, Overgrowth, Ability Haste, Armor, and your choice of a defensive rune. His items are Sunfire Aegis, Defensive Boots, Anathema's Chains, Thornmail, Abyssal Mask, and either a Randuin's Omen or a Warmox. Our next mid lane build is for Tahm Kench. Following his mini rework, the possibilities of this champion are now endless. Especially at level 6 where you have access to a ranged Devour, you can apply an incredible amount of kill pressure. His W also acts as a potential way to start off ganks or even gank a side lane. For the runes, you'll be taking Unsealed Spellbook, Magical Footwear, Biscuit Delivery, Cosmic Insight, Overgrowth, Bone Plating or Second Wind, Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and your choice of a defensive rune. The items are Frostfire Gauntlet, Defensive Boots, Anathema's Chains, Spirit Visage, Randuin's Omen, and a Gargoyle Stoneplate. After Anathema's Chains, build Spirit Visage first if you're trying to play against a heavy AP team, or Randuin's instead when there's a ton of physical damage. You build whichever one you didn't build right after. By building Frostfire Gauntlet, you also gain access to Wave Clear, which you'd be missing otherwise. I wouldn't sleep on Tahm Kench mid after this change. The fact that he has even more mobility early on makes him a much bigger threat early on. Yeah, he's different from how he presents himself. A tank that does a lot of damage. He's quite literally catfishing. I have a lot of experience with that. Even if you miss with his W, you can at least zone out enemies and force them to walk a certain direction to dodge the ability. That covers the mid lane builds, and like always, we put them up on the screen one more time for you guys to review. Next up, we'll be covering the bottom lane. For the bottom lane, we have one build to cover, and that's for Karthus. While unpopular, he sported a 53% win rate as a bot laner last patch. He has the range and the damage output to be picked for sure, but he's obviously a bit riskier as a result of his lack of mobility and low base stats. Nonetheless, it's not a horrible pick. I mean, you get rewarded for dying and, well, you're an ADC, you're gonna be dying a lot nonetheless. His scaling is insane and the turret dive pressure is suffocating as he has no problem initiating, dying, and finishing things off with his ultimate. As a quick note, you typically want to run Summoner Exhaust when playing Karthus. This makes it much more difficult for the enemies to dive you, and you're also able to easily 1v1 enemies who go in solo. Also, it's way easier to land your Qs when the enemy can't even move. For runes, run Dark Harvest, Taste of Blood, Eyeball Collection, Ultimate Hunter, Absolute Focus, Gathering Storm, Double Adaptive Force, and your choice of a defensive rune. If the enemy team has a ton of divers, you can instead opt into Presence of Mind and Last Stand. You can take Last Stand in this situation because you can expect to spend a decent amount of your time utilizing your passive to deal damage. In this case, Presence of Mind is probably the best second rune that you can take in the precision tree. We covered our one bot lane build, so let's take a look at the screen one more time for that recap. Finally, we'll be wrapping up our builds with a support build as well as a bottom lane duo. First up, we have a support pick Wukong. This build can be used with or without Fasting Senna as his lane partner. Obviously, running Senna allows you to more consistently finish items, but playing games out with only 1 or 2 items finished is still manageable. Wukong is a great initiator with his ultimate, and in a worst case scenario, you can go ahead and at least provide crowd control. For runes, you'll be taking Conqueror, Triumph, Legend Tenacity, Last Stand, Biscuit Delivery, Cosmic Insight, Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and your choice of a defensive stat. If you have a Fasting Senna, take Alacrity, Bone Plating, and Overgrowth instead. You'll be looking to play more aggressively, and the extra combat stats will make taking the early fights much easier. Next, you'll build Steel Shoulder Guards followed up by an Ionian Boots of Lucidity, and then you want to get Stridebreaker. After those 3 items, you can either build a Syrinx Gauge or Kenpunk Chainsword for the anti-heal, as well as either Black Cleaver against tanks or Chainsword if you built the Syrinx first. Finally, wrap it up with a Guardian Angel. The last build that we have is our duo bot lane combo. Miss Fortune and Leona have always been a solid duo lane with their impressive kill power. Get hit by one Leona ability and you're instantly dead to Miss Fortune's high burst damage or her ultimate after level 6. What's new about this build is that now it includes Anathema's Chains. Leona has 3 abilities that apply crowd control. Obviously, the reduced tenacity is even more valuable as a result. If her nemesis gets tagged by any crowd control, they're going to be stuck even longer. The extra duration this adds makes it even more difficult for the enemies to survive. On top of this, the damage reduction and defensive stats that Leona's W provides makes it much more difficult for her nemesis to kill her, as they already have to deal with the reduced damage. For Miss Fortune, run either Exhaust or Heal paired with Flash. For runes, you'll be running Conqueror, Presence of Mind, Legend Bloodline, Cut Down, Absolute Focus, Gathering Storm, Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and your choice of a defensive stat. For items, build Immortal Shield Bow, Berserker's Creep, Bloodthirster, Infinity Edge, Lord Dominic's Regards, and a Guardian's Angel. Leona runs Ignite regardless of what Miss Fortune uses. For runes, run Aftershock, Fond of Life, Bone Plating, Overgrowth, Cosmic Insight, Biscuit Delivery, Ability Haste, Adaptive Force, and your choice of a defensive stat. For her items, you want to build a Relic Shield, Defensive Boots, Locket of Iron Solari, Anathema's Chains, Zeke's Convergence, and a Gargoyle Stoneplate. That covers our support and bot lane duo builds. Like you'd expect, we put them up one last time for you guys to take a look at. Give all of these builds a try, all of them are really great. And if you don't want to try them yourself but you need some proof, you could go ahead and see me try them on my stream at twitch.tv/Nathan_ing. I stream every weekday except for Tuesdays from 6 to 8 p.m. PST, and I hope to see y'all there. We made it to the end of our Korean builds for patch 11.13, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments down below. Also, make sure to check out the description for a link to join our Discord. Make some friends, be a part of the community, and be one of the first ones to know about any giveaways that we do. Hopefully, I get to see y'all there too. Go ahead and chat me up. Don't be a stranger. I wish you guys the best of luck on Summoner's Rift, and also hope that you're having a great rest of your day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day. Peace.